Hey, good morning guys, I'm the Tech Prepper, hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to continue our series on no random contacts, and I'm going to try to send my wife a text message from the Tonto National Forest. There's an area I have not explored that's not quite up on the mesa, but I want to see if I can make it about halfway out there. It's going to be about 3.5 miles, and the goal is for me to send her an SMS text using my radio and a small device. I will not have access to the internet or the cell network, but she does, and this is another great tool to add to your toolkit is if you want to keep in contact with a loved one and they may not be an amateur radio operator, but you are. Stay tuned. All right guys, this is a good stopping point before I do the ascent onto the ridgeline. Just got another set of buck cholla here. It happens about every 5 times on these runs. So I'll take care of that with the multi-tool in a second. So going through a cholla patch right now. We're on the other side of Ruin Ridge. That was the ridge we saw from my house. And I'm going to be working my way up to the base, and up there is New River Mesa. So I just want to get a little bit higher. I'm only about 300 feet higher than at my house. We left at 2,200 feet. I'm about 25, and that's a little over 4,000. And the plan is to get high enough where I can hit a APRS digipeater either to my east or to my west. So I'm going to take care of this cholla, and we'll see how far we get, and we'll go ahead and see if we can make that contact with my wife using the cell network, not on my side, on her side, and just the radio on my end. Okay. So this is why I always carry the multi-tool. These little suckers suck. They're everywhere. All right, folks, I made it about another mile out and ran into another giant cholla. In fact, this one was about 3 times the size. It was kind of painful, so I did not take the time to pull out the GoPro. I have this one mostly out, but you can see how many needles I have in there that I still need to pull out. And I got to tell you, this is a lot more painful than the little ones. So this is actually a very good test. I did not plan for this to happen. I'm going to go ahead and try to send a text message to my wife with my radio. In the interest of time, I'm probably just going to see if I can do it, show you a little bit of it, but really we're going to spend time talking about it at the house. All right, guys, I found a good vantage point. Let me get off this rock. I'm actually a fairly good height. That was the ridge that we ended up going around, and the house is about, point to point, about 3 miles south. So I'm going to try to do this in one take, boo-boos aside, and we'll see if we can send a text message to my wife. This rock is not cooperating. All right, so what we're going to do to make this happen, I brought my Yaesu VX6R. This is just an analog radio. I have an Android phone, and then I have what I like to call my APRS field kit. Now we're going to get into APRS in lots of future videos. Don't let it overwhelm you. It's part of something called packet radio. But for this demonstration, I want to keep things very simple and straightforward. So just want to show you this little kit. There are radios on the market that have the APRS capabilities built in, so you technically don't need a phone or this little device. Now, yes, I know the Mobilinkd TNC is unobtainium right now. This is the Mobilinkd TNC 2. I've had this for over 2.5 years now, and this is the device that we're going to pair with my phone and connect to my radio. I've got a special cable to connect the radio to this device. So I'm going to go ahead and set that stuff up, and we'll do a better walkthrough when I get back to the shack. So I've got my VX6R turned on, tuned to the nationwide APRS frequency 144.390. I've got the Mobilinkd TNC strapped to the back, and I've got Bluetooth going. So we're going to record on the screen here, and the first thing I want to do is launch my APRSDroid app. Sorry I can't do shit about that plane that's screwing up my field video. So we're going to start tracking, and we're already getting some stations pop up here. And what we want to do is send a message and we want to send it to a gateway service called SMSGTE. And don't worry, I'm going to explain all this when we get back to the shack. And I'm going to craft a message to my wife. And the way it works for SMS Gate is we put the @ symbol, the phone number, or an alias. And to have a little bit of privacy, I have created an alias for my wife's phone number called wife. And then I'm going to put my message and put safe on peak and hit OK. And hopefully we have enough height to get this message to go out. And I have to hit a tower that is like 30 miles either east or west of me. And I have a little bit of obstructions in my way, so this may not work. Either way, it's a technique worth testing out. And I'm gonna pause the video and I'm gonna try to get my radio elevated here a bit. Well guys, I told you that I would never lie to you. Unfortunately, I don't think I can get a signal out. I knew I was in a bad position. I'm gonna go ahead and head back home anyways. It is way past the time I should be out here. And I'll show you how to do this from the shack, or maybe even the vehicle, who knows. This technique is actually proving, actually this is a good point that I want to make. I sometimes rely on this as my only method of communication, and sometimes it's not possible. So this tool works when you're able to hit a radio station that is capable of receiving your message and putting it on the internet and allowing it to go through the cell network, and then also coming back the other way. So I would not rely on this one for your life. If this was an actual injury, I would probably have to work my way down. Actually, another option is to see if I can get into a repeater and see if anybody will come back to me. What do you guys think? This is KT1RUN. I'm wondering if anybody monitoring the Metrolink system would be willing to give me a radio report. I am pretty deep into the Tonto and just wondering if my signal is making it into Daisy Mountain. Very good. I appreciate the report. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I was looking for WB4ZKA Mike, but happy that you actually came back to me. With that said, be safe and thank you for the report. I'll say 7-3 KT1RUN. All right, guys. Well, you know, at least I was able to raise somebody. Technically, that was a random contact, but it's good knowing that I'm able to at least raise somebody if this was actually a real emergency. Anyways, we'll get back to the shack. I'll go over APRS. I'll go over SMS Gate. I'll show you guys how to send a text message, what's involved, and all that good stuff. All right, guys, I'm gonna head down this peak and go all the way back to the house. Hopefully there will be no more attacking Chollas on the way home. Hey, good morning, guys. Let's go ahead and jump into our after action report. But before we do that, I wanna set the record straight yet again. I am not the expert in amateur radio. I've only been on the air for about 2.5 years, and in that time my focus has been to utilize amateur radio as a tool to solve various grid down scenarios. This No Random Contact series is the culmination of a lot of techniques I've discovered over the last 2.5 years, and I'm just trying to share them with you guys in the way that uses simple language. And I apologize if some of the more advanced amateur radio operators look at it as me just being the dumb gorilla in the room, but I think there's a lot of value in sharing what I'm finding, even if it's not at the level of technical explanation that you're looking for. So for those guys, there's other channels for you. For people that are new to the hobby or considering coming in and looking at amateur radio for preparedness, welcome. Again, I'm just a guy sharing with you what I've learned, and I'm still learning. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. There may be some technical inaccuracies here and there. I do apologize in advance, but I think there's value in sharing these experiences. All right, so this is the part that I'm going to try to keep very simple, even though it's going to be a little technical. How did we do what we set out to accomplish? Well, we're using something called packet radio. It's been around for multiple decades. And packet radio, if I were to take my Bubba definition out here, would be the ability to take a piece of data and package it in something called a packet, and basically have a hardware or software device on your radio that can take that and send it over analog radio. And then on the receiving side, another analog radio would pick that up, decode it, and basically digitize it. So that's the essence of packet radio. Now there's another service called APRS, or the Automatic Packet Reporting System. And it is designed to basically allow you to share data in terms of your actual geographic position. You can send messages from station to station. It does a whole bunch of other things, but when the internet started to emerge, people realized that they could bridge APRS with the internet, and they started to create these things called internet gateways and gateway services. And we used a gateway service called SMSGTE or SMSGTE, and it basically bridges radio with the cell network using the internet as glue in between. So hopefully I haven't lost anybody yet. So when I was out in the Tonto, I had an analog radio and then a small device that can do packet radio and a little bit of software on my phone called APRSDroid that allowed me to craft a message and basically send that packet out into the world over RF, over radio. Now, this is where the preppers are going to say this is too complicated for me to depend on it for my life, and you're absolutely right. This technique should never be used to depend on your life. There are other ways of doing what we're doing. But basically, we're sending out a message on the radio, and in my case, I had a repeater that was located about 35 miles in one direction and roughly the same distance in the other direction. And I needed that packet to make it to that APRS digipeater or APRS repeater for the purpose of retransmitting it out even farther. And the goal was for another station somewhere in the Phoenix area that had a radio tied to the internet. And these are called internet gateways. So an internet gateway would pick that message up or that packet up, realize that it was destined for the SMS gateway service, sends it off to that internet-based service. That internet-based service is then responsible for putting it on the cell network, and my wife got the message. And then it takes a similar round trip back. So lots of different systems involved, lots of different technologies. So again, the takeaway here is not a lesson learned, because I knew this, that this technique has a lot of failure points. But at the end of the day, it did allow me to send my wife a text message out in the wild. So I was pretty happy with that. All right, so let's talk about how to actually do this and what's required. So first, the operator that is going to be transmitting via radio, that person needs to have their amateur radio license. Here in the US, all you need is your technician class license. 2, you need a radio station that is capable of doing APRS. Now there are 2 ways of doing this. There are radios on the market that have APRS built in. We did not do that for the purpose of this video. However, I have 2 radios. In my Jeep, I have the Kenwood D710, and it has built-in APRS capabilities. I've shown that a few times on the channel. I like it because there are fewer moving parts for things to go wrong. And there are lots of new radios from basically all the manufacturers that will do APRS messaging built in. For this exercise, we were actually just using my analog radio, which is a dumb radio, if you want to use that term. It does not have APRS capabilities, but we can take a traditional piece of hardware called the TNC or terminal node controller and connect it to the radio, and then ultimately also interface it with either a computer or a smartphone. So to do that, I have been using the Mobilinkd TNC. These are actually not available right now. They're all out of stock. They have been for a while. But basically, this is a small device that you connect to your radio. There are a number of different cables. So this is my old everyday carry radio, the FT60, and I have a small 3.5 millimeter jack that will plug into the radio and one that will plug into this device. Heck, let's just do that real quick here. So this is all that is required. Now, as you'll notice, there are 3 components here, two of which have batteries. We've got the battery on the HT, the battery on the TNC, and a cable in between. So more failure points going down this route is the point. For this exercise, I actually used an older TNC. This is the TNC Model 2, and basically it has a different cable. And that's the nice thing about the Mobilinkd TNC, is that you can have the same device and you can use them with multiple radios. All you need is the appropriate cable, which they have available on their store. Two things before we move on. One thing I don't like about the TNC, or the Mobilinkd TNC, is this push button here. I can't tell you how many times I have gone into the field and the battery has been fully drained. You can actually turn this on by just squeezing the case. Notice I didn't even touch this button and it went off. So I have tried my best to protect it by putting a little piece of plastic over it, but it's still not perfect. So this device is a little janky, but it does work when it works, so keep that in mind. So we've got the radio, we've got the TNC, and then the last bit you need, at least with this route, is a smartphone. On the Android side, there's an application called APRSDroid, which we used, and on the iPhone, there is an application called APRS.fi. So you can see how technical we're getting. Hopefully you guys are still with me, but the point here is that some of amateur radio delves into what we're calling digital data modes. This is one of them, and they do add complexity, but you do get some value. I mean, you get the ability now to interoperate with non-hams by virtue of this technique. So just to recap, you basically need your tech license and a radio that can do APRS. You have two options for the radio: a built-in unit that has APRS capabilities, or interfacing a TNC with your radio. In my case, I'm using the Mobilinkd TNC 2 or 3. All right, so if this wasn't already complicated, let's go ahead and pull out our Android phone. Again, you can do this with the iPhone. The software is just a little bit different. All right, so there are two applications you need. I've got a ham radio bucket here, and the first one is an application that Mobilinkd TNC offers for free, and it's the ability to configure the TNC with your radio. Now, one of the first things you need to do after you pair the Bluetooth device, their manual has instructions on how to do that. You need to select the Bluetooth device. Since I have both the Model 2 and Model 3, and I have the 2 connected, I'm going to select TNC 2. And you can see now on the screen that I'm connected. Now, depending on which radio you have, you're going to have to select your PTT style. And all that means is which hardware configuration do you have to actually key up or transmit. And I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick. On the VX6, you want it set to multiplex, and we're going to test a tone. And to do that, I have my second radio here, and if we're able to successfully transmit a tone, we know that our transmission side is good. So I'm going to hit transmit, and you can hear now that it's working just fine. We'll stop that. So I have successfully configured at least the transmit side of this radio. Let's turn this off. Now, the input settings for audio are important. This has to do with your speaker volume. And like I said, this is an area where you can screw things up. You want to make sure that the meter shows usually about 1 or 2 red blinking lights here on the end, and it means that your audio levels are pretty good. So in my radio, opening the squelch all the way, and on this radio, setting it to roughly the 9 or 10 o'clock position is exactly where I want to be. So with that done, or with that configured, we're going to go ahead and I'll save the settings and disconnect. All right, guys, so we're almost there. So the next thing we want to do is open up our APRSDroid application. I can't recall if this is paid or free anymore, but I'm a big fan of supporting the developers because this stuff takes time. I'm not going to get into all of the configuration here. The manual does a very good job. I just want to show you how it works. So the first thing we're going to do is hit start tracking. And right off the bat, I can already see that in green, we have transmitted my location as a beacon. And the stuff in blue means that we are decoding messages. The next thing I want to do is send a special message to the SMSGTE service. So you'll see a to field, just put in SMSGTE and then your message. Now the message is fairly straightforward for SMSGTE. You need to put in the @ symbol followed by your phone number, no spaces. The only problem I have with that is that your phone number goes over the clear and everybody gets to see that. When you sign up for an SMSGTE account, which is something you have to do for this to work, go to their website, you can bind your amateur radio call sign to that service, and they have a section that allows you to create aliases. And it's basically a shorthand for phone number. I have one called Wife, that's the one I used, and I have one called YouTube. In fact, I have a couple of known contacts that I do this with. So I'm gonna go ahead here and put YouTube for my number. And then you wanna make sure you put in a space. Now, the message payload, including all of this, has to be fairly small. It's somewhere in the 60 character range. I can't recall offhand right now. And I'm gonna put, I don't know, coffee is great, for lack of a better term. And then I'm gonna hit OK, and it should transmit. Let's go ahead and show you guys this. And you can see it transmitting right now. Now, I will tell you, it's going to be a 50-50 crapshoot on whether this text message is able to go out based on my home location on 5 watts. It's gonna be rough, but basically that is all that is required to be able to send that out. Now, I'm not gonna move to a better location to make this happen, so this is the point where I'm gonna stop the demo. And I'm gonna go ahead and just let it do its thing while we're still talking and closing out the video. All right, guys, let me go ahead and start the recording again. Of course, as soon as I go ahead and stop the recording, the message actually made it through. So let's start the recording again. And I want to show you a few things here. So first on my screen where you see it's 5:57 a.m. It's in bright green. Coffee is great. That is one sign that it was fully acknowledged. If we go back to the main screen here, there should have been an acknowledgement somewhere. But anyways, that's not really the point. This phone is the phone that I sent it to, so it actually came over the cell network. So if I look at my text messages here, you can see here that APRS SMSGTE, I've got the message from at KT1 run -7, coffee is great. So it literally went out the radio to the digipeater, to an iGate station, to the SMSGTE service, to the cell network, and back to me. So it worked. To respond, and again, I don't know if this is gonna work on the way back, the way you respond is, like if this was my wife, for example, you wanna respond with the @ call sign that you received. So that's at KT1 RUN dash, where's the dash? -7, and I'll put, yep. So when I send this, it's sending it from my cell phone to the cell network. And I got a buzz, which I believe means we got it on this app. Let's go back. And very cool. All right, so you can see that there at the bottom of the screen that we got the message back from SMSGTE, YouTube, yep. All right, fantastic. The APRS gods are with us this morning. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I need to start drinking again. That was a tough one. So let's recap everything we did. So we are using, in my mind, a kind of fun, hackish service to be able to interoperate between hams and non-hams using the cell phone. The value that that provides is that you have opened yourself up to pretty much everyone in the world that has a cell phone and the ability to do SMS text messages. So very cool. The downside to this technique is, one, I need to be licensed. Not really a downside, but I have to be licensed. I have to have a APRS compatible radio station, whether built in or kind of cobbled together the way that I did it here. I have to be able to make sure that my signal can get out to a digipeater or even an iGate that's close so that it can be put on the internet. It needs to be able to access the SMS gateway service, which is out of my control, and then it needs to go off to the cell network. So a lot of moving parts here, but I wanted to share this technique because it's something that I use a lot. In fact, in the next video, if all goes well, I actually have to climb Mount Whitney, which is in the Sierra Nevadas. It's at an elevation of 14,505 feet. I'm going to bring this station, the Mobilinkd, my Android, and my VX6. And when I get to Summit, I'm going to see if I'm able to send an email to my wife using this same technique. We're going to be using another gateway service called Email-2. So at any rate, guys, I don't know how you like these technical videos, but they are going to get more technical as time moves on. I encourage everybody to research APRS on their own, research the radios that are out on the market that do this, and research these various gateway services. I think it's just another tool that you have in your toolkit. If you are going to put a PACE plan where you have a primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency set of communication methods, I would never count this as the emergency one. This could be like the primary, for example, like we did when we went out, and then the alternate would have been to get on a repeater system, for example, or your cell phone further down, who knows. Point is, this technique has a lot of different variables that can go sideways when you need it. But with that said, I appreciate all you guys, especially you guys on Buy Me a Coffee. You guys are really getting me one step closer to making this be my full-time gig so that I could just work on product development and software all day long and still do videos with you guys. All right, I'm the Tech Prepper. Be strong, be safe, and be prepared. Well, folks, we might as well turn this into a short freestyle video since I kind of screwed up the APRS bit. My hydration bladder in my pack actually just ran empty, but I always bring with me a couple of smart water bottles. And the reason why I like these is because they have threaded caps. And I have this cool little product that a buddy from curated.com insisted I buy maybe a year and a half ago, and it's by Source Tactical. And all you do is drop this guy on the threads, and then it has a let's do that properly. Drop this guy on the threads, and it's got this little male piece here that will actually adapt to your hydration water tube. So you take this off, connect this here, and now we're backfilling my hydration bladder. So it's easier in the field not to muck around with my hydration bladder, pulling it out, risking a leak. Instead, just backfilling it has worked really well for me, and it's actually easier for me to purify and store the water in these 1 liter smart water bottles. Anyways, since I screwed up the video, screwed up everything, I figured why not show you some gear I use in the field since it was time to hydrate anyhow. All right, we're still gonna do an after action report. There's value in this exercise, especially since we failed. So we'll talk about that maybe tomorrow morning before work.